There's a goddess in Scottish folklore who doesn't heal. She doesn't nurture. She doesn't comfort. She freezes. Her name is the Cailleach. She's one of the oldest figures in Gaelic tradition, older than the stories that try to contain her. And she rules the dark half of the year, from Samhain to Bealtaine, when the land goes still and everything alive retreats underground. Most people hear that and think it's a story about seasons, about nature, about the cycle of the year. It's not. It's a story about you. It's about every part of yourself you've ever put into cold storage and called it moving on. In Scottish tradition, the Cailleach is the divine hag, the veiled one. Some stories call her Bera, Queen of Winter. She carries a staff that freezes the ground with every strike. She washes her great plaid in the whirlpool of Corryvreckan, and when she spreads it across the mountains to dry, the land turns white. She's not evil, that's important. She's not a villain. In many of the oldest stories, she's a creator. She shaped the mountains, she carved the lochs, she dropped boulders from her creel that became islands. She built this landscape, and then she froze it. Every year, without fail, she froze it. But here's the part most retellings skip. She doesn't freeze things to destroy them. She freezes things to preserve them. Underneath the ice, the seeds are still there. The roots are still alive. The green is waiting. Nothing has been lost. It's been held. Protected by the cold from the things that would consume it too early. The Cailleach's winter isn't death. It's a keeping. And every year when Bridget arrives at Imbolc, or in some versions when the Cailleach herself transforms into Bridget, the thaw begins. What was frozen starts to move again, not because the cold was wrong, but because the keeping is finished. The question is whether you're ready to let it. So here's where this stops being a folklore episode and starts being a conversation. Because I don't tell these stories as history lessons, I tell them because they're mirrors. And this one is a mirror I think a lot of women need right now. We all have a Cailleach in us, a part of us that knows how to freeze things, how to take something that's too alive, too raw, too dangerous to hold in the open and put it somewhere cold, somewhere it can't hurt us, somewhere it can't be seen. And sometimes that's wisdom. Sometimes freezing is exactly the right thing to do when you're not safe, when you're not ready, when the world around you can't hold what you're carrying. The Cailleach freezes to protect, and so do we. But here's where it gets uncomfortable. Some of you froze something 10 years ago and you're still calling it winter. You froze your ambition because someone told you it was too much. You froze your anger because you were told it wasn't feminine. You froze your creativity because it didn't seem practical. You froze the part of you that wanted more than the relationship, more than the career, more than the version of your life that everyone else was comfortable with. And you didn't call it freezing, you called it growing up, being realistic, putting other people first, letting go. But the Cailleach doesn't destroy what she freezes, she preserves it. And that's the part that should either terrify you or give you hope, probably both. Because it means it's still in there. The ambition, the anger, the creativity, the desire, the version of you that existed before you learned to make yourself smaller. She's not gone, she's frozen, and she is still perfectly intact underneath the ice. Now, here's what I see in my work, and I'll be honest with you because that's what I do. A lot of women come to tarot, come to shadow work, come to spiritual spaces, and they use them as another form of freezing. They call it doing the work. They pull cards, they journal, they listen to videos like this one. They gather insight after insight after insight, but they never thaw. They understand their shadow perfectly. They can name their patterns. They know exactly what they're afraid of and where it comes from. They have more self-awareness than most people will ever have. And they're still standing in exactly the same place they were standing 3 years ago. Because knowing isn't thawing. Understanding isn't crossing. Insight without action is just a more sophisticated form of staying frozen. The Cailleach's winter has a purpose. It's protection. It's necessary. But it also has an ending. That's the part of the story we forget. The freeze was never supposed to be permanent. Spring comes, the thaw comes, not because the cold was a mistake, but because the keeping is finished. So the question I'd ask you, and it's not a comfortable one, is this. What have you been keeping frozen that's ready to come back? And what would it actually cost you to let it? I want to give you something to sit with this week, not just to think about, to actually do. So take 10 minutes, get a journal or a piece of paper and answer these 3 questions honestly. Not beautifully, not for Instagram, honestly. 1. What did I put away about myself, my desires, my ambitions that I told myself I was letting go of but actually just froze? 2. When I froze it, was I protecting myself or was I protecting everyone else from the version of me they couldn't handle? 3. If spring came tomorrow, if the thaw started and that part of me began to return, what's the first thing I'd have to do differently? That third question is the one that matters most, because it's the one that moves you from understanding to action, from knowing to choosing, and that's where the real work begins. The Cailleach preserved you, that was her gift, but the thaw, that's yours to choose. If this episode landed somewhere, if you felt something shift even a little, I'd love for you to keep going. I've created a free resource called the Threshold Tarot Spread. It's 5 cards rooted in Scottish folklore, designed specifically for the woman standing between knowing and choosing. You can download it free from my website, the link is in the description below. And if you want to go deeper into the shadow work we touched on today, At the Threshold is a self-guided shadow work resource I've put together. Journaling prompts, reflective practices, folklore-rooted exercises. It's £11, it's private, and it's designed for the woman who wants to do this work at her own pace without anyone watching. That link's in the description too. The Lantern Letters go out every Sunday, a weekly reflection on tarot, shadow work and folklore written for women navigating a crossroads. If you would like that in your inbox, the link is below. I'm Carrie, this is Sage in the Sky, and if you're standing at a threshold right now, you're not lost, you're just between seasons.